Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Politics with Flo. I am your host, Flo, and today's session evidently has to do with what just happened yesterday. If you're living under a rock, you might not know that we bombed Iran, right? So this is something that I think a lot of us are disappointed with, and you could even have liberals and conservatives on the same side with this one, which is really rare to see. Both parties or both schools of thought on the same wavelength. But, this is, I think I've been seeing a lot of people who are just totally against it. The only ones that I don't see against this are the ones that are pro-Israel or just fans of Trump, right? But anywho, that's just happened. And to me, again, this is very disappointing because in all the years that I've been alive, in all the years that I've been able to vote for presidents, every single one of them has bombed a country in one way, shape, or form. So it's no surprise, this is nothing new. I'm not shocked about that, right? But considering all the stuff that I've been speaking about recently regarding Trump, and Trump, is not a politician. At least this is not the way he conducts himself under his presidency. This second time around has just been a total disaster, in my opinion. It has not been good at all. And for us to potentially enter a war during this time is not the time to be doing it, because as a nation, we're completely divided, I would say, and this is not the time to be doing this. I have always been critical of our foreign policy. I have always been against war, especially because, one, the majority of us do not benefit from this at all. It's usually individuals who have some kind of investment in these countries, right? And in this case, we've been supporting Israel for years, so there's no other way about it. That's what it's about. And before we start talking about how, Iran could potentially cause a nuclear war, look, that has been around since the Cold War, since Russia, so that's nothing new, right? And the U.S., in my opinion, needs to stop playing daddy to the entire world, the great police of the entire world, because it doesn't benefit the average American, the typical person in the U.S. We do not benefit from this at all, right? So my opinions on that have not changed since I become politicized, whether I was on the left and now more in the center or more towards what I like to call truth, right? That hasn't changed at all. That's been pretty stable and consistent, right? And the reason why I am titling this "Why It Doesn't Matter How You Vote" is because that's how I feel. I've had the sentiment now for a while, but really, this to me really, I guess, is the icing on the cake. Sorry, the cherry on top, right? And, Trump, like I said, he's not a politician, right? He's not somebody who speaks like a politician. He's going to speak his mind. And that, to me, is not the shocker, right? But, Trump has put a target on his back for the way he speaks, for what he says. And it's made it a lot easier for Democrats and liberals and leftists to be critical of Trump because of that. It's just, he comes with it, right? There's no denying that the stuff that he does is inflammatory. I've already talked about this in the past, but it's so easy to do that, right? And I think this really distracts us from the entire problem. From the real problem is that both political parties will play ping pong with us, the common folk, and make us fight against each other by choosing a side. And if we don't, then we're labeled whatever the other side wants to call us, right? And I've really realized this now with Trump in office. Even someone like him, who again has been, I guess, less. How do I say it? He doesn't care about what you think about him, right? That's another way of saying it. And again, initially the rhetoric, although I'm not for it and I don't like it per se, it didn't really bug me because, it's rhetoric, whatever, right? But now when the rhetoric is followed with actions and policies and that affects people who live in this country, then it is a problem, right? So again, the very beginning of this year, his actions, right, started with the tariffs, then the ICE raids, and now this potential war that we can start with the entire world, right, because of what he is doing. Excuse me. So, I realize this. Then I really have come to the conclusion that both of these parties are only interested in maintaining the status quo, right? Republicans, as of recent, have been pandering to conservatives, to the right, and Democrats since the 1960s or after the Civil Rights Movement have been pandering to liberals and minorities. And again, they both tug on the emotions of these schools of thought, right? Today, you are either a liberal or a conservative. I would say the majority of people fall under those two schools of thought. Yes, it is a spectrum. You have people who are far on the left, who want nothing to do with this country. Then you have people on the far right who hate everybody who is not white or whatever, right? So, yes, you have those extremes, but I think those two are caricatures of what really represents the United States. I think most of us, I would say, probably are somewhere in between the liberals and conservatives. I think I've made myself very clear, and if I have not, I am a libertarian, right? So I do not necessarily agree with either the right or the left. And I have always tried to choose truth, right? And I think all of us do, but I think when you become a fan of something, and I know this as a fan of football, right? It's very difficult to look at things from a logical perspective when you are just attached to a party, to a system. And I think this is what happens here in America today, that we have people who are so attached to their party, to their political party, that it doesn't matter what they do. They will justify, well, it's for the best of the country, right? So, I've been seeing some people who voted for Trump or who are conservatives or whatever, who are justifying this attack in Iran. And I'm like, why? I mean, what is the purpose of that? That is not, especially those who claim to be America first. Okay, how does this benefit us? Right? Because the rhetoric is, well, they might have nuclear bombs or whatever. And look, I'm a millennial. I've been around in this world for a while now. And I remember the first time when this type of rhetoric was being spewed by Republicans in the early 2000s regarding Iraq, how they could potentially have weapons of mass destruction. And sure enough, there was none, right? So I'm not saying that Iran doesn't have anything, but look, this is not our fight. Again, as a libertarian, I don't want to do anything to do with another country that doesn't benefit the country, right? So I don't care about that. Especially if it's allegedly, right? If it's allegedly, I do not care about another nation's issues. They are not our issues. We need to fix things here in the United States of America first, right? So to create policies or to do things like this, our foreign policy has always been, in my opinion, awful. And this is why I would say most of the world does not like the United States or the flag or whatever. I think that as a nation today, we are more divided than we have ever been in this country. So, we have to do something about this, because if we don't, we do become vulnerable of being invaded. And like any nation that has been great and has been dominant for years, usually the empires end not from outside factors. It starts with inside factors, and then what happens is that outside factors will influence that, and eventually the nation comes to an end, right? So those on the left probably will enjoy this. They want America, the U.S., to die and to no longer exist. But, you know, as somebody who is living in the US and is presently here, war, I think, is romanticized. And for those of you who have watched films or documentaries on revolutions and whatnot, this is often the perspective of romanticism. But the reality is that war is very brutal. It is very violent. And to be alive during a time where this could potentially happen to us, it is very, very dangerous. So it's awful that we are on the brink of possibly another world war. Now, maybe I'm overreacting, and maybe I have done this now for a couple of months now, which is out of character because I don't necessarily do that. But I feel like ever since 2020, my trust in the government has never been there, but it has just gotten worse over the years. And this, again, just for me solidifies that no matter who is in office, no matter who you vote for, their intention, their objective is to maintain the status quo. And that includes keeping these corporations alive, and because they lobby, obviously, right? They're in charge of our, not in charge, but they influence our elections. So, and some of you might agree. Some of you might think, oh no, it's Trump's fault and whatever. Again, that's too easy. It is way too easy to blame this guy because, he is the epitome of what all these people think, right? He is spewing it. But everybody else who has been in office, whether they said this or not publicly, or even privately, I would say, still represent the status quo of what the U.S. wants to do, and that is control the nations, take their resources like any other empire has done historically, right? And to feed their own needs. It's not to feed our needs because, yes, we are citizens of this country, residents, whatever, we live here. But we are not benefiting from this because of most of us, right, are barely getting by. The homeless situation has gotten worse, right? Inflation has gotten worse. Jobs are more scarce. It's not helping us, right? So I don't know what the intentions are of this war. If it is to put a stop to them potentially becoming a nuclear force, then hopefully this stops it. And I really hope that we do not go to a war because of this. But like I said, I just now I really, really understand that it doesn't matter who's up there. It doesn't matter who we vote for. They will continue to protect their own interest and their friends and corporations. And look, I ain't no socialist or whatever, but I am for the people. And I believe that the majority of people should be doing well, right? As a nation, if you wanted to succeed, most people should be doing okay. Not rich, right? But should be able to survive. At the moment right now, we don't have that. And this is not going to help the situation in my eyes, right? But maybe it's just me overreacting or whatever. But I wanted to share that. Why I think that at this point, it doesn't matter who we vote for. It doesn't matter who's in office. Whether they're polished like Obama, well-spoken like him, or somebody who speaks their mind and has no filters like Trump, doesn't matter. Both of these guys, bombed other countries. Both of them have conducted raids that have kicked out a bunch of people from this country. So what does it matter, right? So stop fighting about it. Stop picking sides because it doesn't matter who you pick. We're still getting screwed, in my opinion, right? Now, no, this is Flo. To the next one. If you think something else, if you don't agree with me, let me know, all right? Peace out.